Here I is. Okay. It's Monday. Monday the 18th. I'm on live on early-ish because I gotta go to bed in a couple hours, but that's beside the point. What is important is what's going on in the world right now. We have Abomination doing all types of stuff. This creature is out there. Thinks he's something. I don't know what he thinks he is. But he's not human as far as we're concerned, because if he was, he would be doing human things like family and stuff and helping everyone out and wanting to have everyone perfectly healthy. Oh no. It's abomination care they has in mind. Oh yes, it's abomination care. I don't understand how he gets away with this. He always gets away with it. And it's like, or how does he get away with it? How does he do the things that he does? How does he do everything that he does? Is it the Mossad? Is it just Israel in general that's given him his power? Is it ISIS that he supports and sends troops and wherever supplies and everything to? What is going on? Is this the end times? It could be. Actually, it could be the end times. Could be the end of it all. I am going to help you out in this. I am going to go to a person that may know. Rinse. Rinse.com. I'm just going to read the headlines and you decide. West Coast, everything dead, 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 and dead. Lies. Benign virus killing all West Coast ocean life. Older Japanese Pentax camera lens, giant rad reading. Ex-nuke waste inspector, WIPP, corners were cut. Workers to eventually enter Fukushima reactor building. Oh, really? It dropped that much. It must have fell all the way down into the center of the earth. Underground radiation spikes 40,000 times higher. Oh, I can go on with that. Ebola kills seventh Sierra Leone doctor. Nurses rip U.S. government over Ebola safety. Porting down Sierra Leone 25 or 8-25 Ebola sequences. Ebola November update. MMWR suspect Ebola cases in Delhi airport in India. Mali confirmed Ebola cases increased to 5. You're just on and on and on, and I'm just okay. Uh, I'm trying to get past the Ebola because there's so many articles out there for Ebola. You're not being told this on the mainstream media because they're not going to tell you all this. They want to keep it a secret until you're all infected. They're trying to, they really are. These people, the one percenters, want to stand out on their balconies and look out upon a plush area of land for miles and miles that they can see from their mountaintop and go, look, I own all that. And that's what they're the few for the many instead of the many, the many for the few instead of the few for the many. Let me reverse that. It's what it really is. It's the many for the few. We are now in that state where the few think that they're gods and that's what they think because they have all the money and power and wealth and everything, and they're out there. Israel hits Palestine towns, cities in retaliations for what they did because they've been what? Attacked multiple times by Israel? Israel? Remember, it's three gods that they believe in. Is, Isis, Ra, and El. Just look it up. All you have to do is do your research. Just look up those three names. And you'll know what we're under. We're under this. We're under these creatures who think that they're got these gods working for them. Maybe they do. Maybe that's part of the Anunnaki. Maybe that's part of the, I mean, right now, it's coming back around. What is coming back around? What is coming back? I'll tell you what's coming back around. What's coming back around is a planet with a solar system, and it's coming through our solar system now. I've heard these many people saying it's going to come between Venus and Earth, and it's going to cause havoc and everything. Well, no, it has a set course between Jupiter and Mars. It's a wider area, but it still will cause the same disruption. It will cause all this. Ibu, Abiru, Abiru, I'm not pronouncing it right because I'm not speaking in my mind. I'm just telling you. Okay. Israel vows harsh response to synagogue attack. Oh, really? Uh, Brother Nathaniel, Zion Christians teach Jewish heresy, and they do. They you just have to look at it. All you have to do is look at it, and you're going, I've been lied to all these years? Yes, you have. Israel is not the chosen state with the people that are running it right now. These Asian so-called Jews, because they brought Jews up there and they became Judaism, have come down into Israel to wipe out Christ's legacy, the Palestinians. They've been there longer than they've never been. And, well, that's what's happening. And if you don't see it, you're not paying attention. Okay. Let's go on down through some articles here. This is off of Rense, RENSE.com. And if you go there, you'll see all these stories that will just wake you up and you'll be like mad as hell and won't take it anymore. You've been lied to for so many generations that your parents have taught you this lie since 1948. And you're being lied to. Demented rant. Russians misogamy treat to the world peace. A threat to the world peace. Obama to send U.S. troops to fight ISIS if it gets nukes. They're not going to get nukes unless we give them to them. That's the only way they're going to get nukes. These people are, I don't want to use that word. I don't want to use that. Let's put it this way. They don't have the education, though, to run nukes. Obama to send U.S. troops to fight ISIS if it gets nukes. Kurds advance Kobani Center. Mutants withdraw from Aleppo. Commander flees. Militants. Militants. World terrorism increased fivefold since 9/11. World terrorism increased fivefold since 9/11. Why? Because our country and Israel is out there stirring the beehive up. They're out there beating them with baseball bats. And you wonder why you don't see what's going on. If we all just live together and trade together, there would be no problem. But oh no, there's money junkies out there to make a buck. They got to make the money. They got to take the money from you. Global climate. They got to take the money from you. They call it climate change. Well, I'll tell you right now. I'll tell you right now what climate change is. Okay, you want to know what climate change is? It's called spring. Spring, summer, fall, winter. Spring, summer, fall, winter. That's climate change. It naturally happens. Except at this time, we're going into a mini ice age, and these creatures are out there telling you that it's global warming. It may be cold now, but it's going to get hot. It is. It's going to get hot, and you got to give us your money to fight it. We're going to go pay off the sun. We're going to fire a rocket ship or a bunch of money on it or something, and we're going to cure this problem. No, the sun creates the climate. The sun does it over cycles. It's cooling down right now. The sun is cooling down right now. And when it cools down, we cool down. We have these harsh winters that will last in this mini ice age for 30 years. So get ready for this for 30 years. And don't let these retards out there, I call them retards because they're out to make money off of it, and come up with all these delusionary ideals of climate change. They're just, I mean, Al Gore was the master of it. Him and Blood, or is it Blood and Gore? I mean, you just look at them. These people are creating this to make a profit off of you, to take more money out of your pocket that you don't have. We don't have any more money. They have the police out there doing the same thing. They're out there giving tickets and everything as much as they can to drain you of more money. So you can't feed your kids for a whole month. You can't pay your house payment for a whole month. You can't do anything because they're draining this money out of you because they're greedy little creatures that need to be arrested and put in jail for their greediness, or at least put in an institution where they put you in a plush room, and these money junkies, and they put a dollar bill in the middle of the room. And every time they go for it, going, money, money, and they grab it, it gives them an electrical shock until they're cured. We got to cure these people, or money junkies. All they see is the dollar bill. They don't see you. You're transparent to them. You're just a cow or something to milk the money out of. It's very evil. And they're doing this stuff. And I'm just, and it makes me mad. It makes me really mad that they're getting away with it. They're getting away with rape of the American people financially. They're trying to make the banks so an inverse of you putting your money and getting interest. They charge you interest on the money. They're doing that in Europe right now. They're turning it around. They're saying, if you have money in our bank, you got to pay us to hold the money. Huh? Yeah. We're not paying you interest anymore. It's anti-interest or backwards interest. It's you give us money for having it in there. Well, at that point, people, I would take your money out of the bank. I would put in your pillow, under your mattress, out in the, a cornfield, whatever, and bury it and keep it away from them. Because when they don't know where it's at, they can't get their hands on it, their claws. I mean, this is, it's really wrong. Absolutely wrong what they're doing right now. And I just go down through these articles, and I've read a lot of them. I'm just reading the headlines of them. Oh, look, crucial vote on surveillance bill. NSA is out there. They call themselves national security for themselves, but that's beside the point. You're not supposed to think that. The mainstream TV, NBC, ABC, CBS, MSNBC, Fox, CNN, you go down the line, and they're gonna tell you it's all good. It's not good. It's evil. It's absolute evil. And your next generation of children are going to feel that. You may say nothing now, just like they did before World War II, when the German people were out there and they were being affected by the same ideology, and they just stood back. And look what happened to them. Look what happened to them. You're not paying attention. This is just madness. Absolute madness going on. What's going on with the ruble? The ruble is increasing. The yuan is increasing. All these monies are increasing to become the world dominant money because the American money has faltered. It did its job and it's going down the drain. The banksters will move on to these countries like Russia and China and try to restart their system in them. I'm hoping that they're smart enough to say, you just go back home and settle down. That's what I'm hoping. Because we've lost it. We've lost it. And when we lose everything, we lose it. That's what's coming down the pipe anyways. Ferguson is an example of this. These people have lost their faith in the police and the government. They've just totally lost it. Why? Because they're criminals. The police and government are criminals, and they have proved it to themselves over and over again. Goober came out and said, you're a bunch of idiots out there. We're smart. We can take more from you because you're stupid. And he actually came out and said that publicly. And I don't think you should agree with anything the government says from now on because of that statement, because they are out there. Ebola, Obama, whatever you want to call him, or Bozo, he's proved that the Democratic Party is nothing but a socialist state, and we've got to bring it down because it's fascist in its own state, because he fell into the trap and he let the corporations take over the government. Mussolini said that fascism is corporates taking over everything. And when corporates take over everything, we have a dictatorship. At one point or another will come along. I mean, you don't have to be smart to know this, just wise and awake to see it happening. Okay. Small town, U.S. police forces vanishing. That's an interesting one. I may tap on that and read that just because. This is these headlines. The new beheadings. It's a setup. It's a false flag. It's out there. There's there's things you have to watch carefully when you watch it. You have to have a lot of watching movies and seeing special effects to see that this is a lie. And we can go on. 5 nuclear scientists murdered in Damascus. Oh, well, there's more. It's like the biologicals, the guys that were working on biological cures and stuff were murdered. They were taken out of the picture because they're coming up with something to reduce the population 90%. Georgia Guidestones, Georgia Guidestones. Just look up the word Georgia Guidestones in Google, and you'll know what's going on. And this stuff just keeps coming, and it's coming harder and harder, where you can't deny it anymore. It gets to a point where you can't deny it, and it's happening. Weird stuff happening. Okay. I'm going to paste this now, this Hangout, on my Google Plus page, and you'll be able to get on here. I am going to do this right now. Oops. No. I have weird stuff happening on here. I got NSA and everyone attacking at me, and it's just, I can't keep this up. I'm going to put down Monday ... space, and I'm going to put it on my page. I'm going to paste it when I get a chance here. Give me a moment, and you'll be able to come right on here. No problem. There it is. Shared. Okay. Now you have a link onto my page. I'm trying to wake people up as quick as I can with the limited time I got every night. I have a limited time. I have to go to bed within a half hour, 45 minutes. And this is what I'm trying to get across to everyone. We are in a new world order of weirdness. It's not fully enforced yet, or we'd have police on every corner. It'd be like, it'd be like all these shows you see on TV, because they go to Hollywood and put these scenarios out there, and they make them into movies. So a lot of this stuff you're seeing in movies are scenarios. They're basically living scenarios. They want to see it on print and see how it comes out, with the writers end it all and everything. Go, that seems cool. We should try that. And they do. They do it all. Obamacare equals a death panel for the U.S. economy. I'm amazed I haven't got to the weather yet. I mean, there's so much in the weather. We've had record cold this early in November, and it should be 30 days almost before we have something like this. This has covered the entire United States. They even said that every state was below 32 degrees, except for one. I think it was Florida, because down by Miami, it was in the 50s and 60s and 70s. Okay. And Hawaii, the main island, Hawaii, had their first snowfall that was heaviest they ever had. and it was 32 degrees up in the hills. Not down by the shoreline, but it still adds in that the entire country was at 32 degrees and below. It's a record for the entire country. And we're in this believing that there's global warming. It's happening because of CO2 and people breathing. We got to kill people so they can't breathe and make it warm. Well, you guys are way off, screwed up in the head on SSRIs. You know, you're on some medication that's insane, and you're thinking that you can get away with this taxation on the public in general and the world and all, and it's not going to work. People are waking up to it. It's been cooling down for over 30 years, and we have 30 more years of cooling down to go. And these people are going to call it global warming and call it climate change. Like I said, climate change is spring, summer, you know, fall, winter. That's climate change. You can't tax us on that. That's a natural cycle. These cycles come and go. The sun is a big ball of hydrogen that blows up every once in a while. It's basically a flare star. It has solar flares. It comes off. It goes through cycles, and right now it's calming down. It's cooling off. We're going through a gas cloud in the universe right now, a big gas cloud, and it's cooling everything off. And you guys are a trip. You global warmingists are a trip. I mean, you got to see this guy's book. I think it was called Dark Climate. And he wrote this book back in 2007. And he predicted this is exactly what was going to happen, because he said, we've been cooling off for 30 years. And now we're going into a cycle where the sun's cooling down because of all this gas and stuff we're going through in our solar system. I mean, the sun's shooting it off, but it's cool. The entire space is cool, and it's cooling the sun down. And this is actually going to last, I think it was 1,000 years or something of that nature to get through this cloud. So we're going to have this period where all this stuff is happening and we're cooling down. They just keep playing the game. They keep playing the game because there's money to be made from your pocket to theirs. It's like the city commercial, it's like, what's in your wallet? We want it in ours, is what it should say. And that's what we're running into. New physics, quantum bioholography. That should be interesting. I haven't read that story yet. The crystals that can clean the planet. There's crystals that can clean the planet. How strict is too strict? How much can we take? How much can we keep going? Modern slavery affects more than 35 million people. I just keep going down through these headlines. I mean, I could read some of these if you want me to. Just say, read that one. I'll read it. Let me go back onto the page and see if anyone wrote anything. No, nobody wrote anything. This is just unreal. We are living in a nightmare of control freaks. Basically what they are. They're control freaks. They control everything you think, see, and hear. They're like the outer limits. Sit back and we'll control everything you see and hear. We can make the moon blurred or we can bring it to crystal clarity. We can just on with that. It's this, and it's the mainstream media, MSM. They're the ones, and we're sitting back and we're enjoying it. How can we be enjoying less money, less life, less everything? The only thing that has increased in profit for ourselves is the lowering of gas prices. When gasoline is now 2.79 a gallon, the only reason that's 2.79 a gallon is because they want you to go out to the stores and buy Christmas, Christmas, Christmas. They already got all the Christmas stuff up. They want you to go out and buy stuff. Put yourself in debt with your credit cards. They want you to do all this stuff. Why? Because you are not having the money to spend right now. And they're lowering the gas prices. So you're going, oh, wow, I got an extra, $30 a week or whatever to spend on Christmas. I can go Christmas shopping now. No, deny them. Deny them. Do not go Christmas shopping. Go to craft shops. Go to anywhere else but the major stores and everything. Show them that you know the hurt you can put on them and shut down these money junkies that are running everything, the corporations that are running everything. You got to show them you're still not going to bite the bait. I'm not biting that. That's all you have to do. Make something at home. Give out, home goods. Make something yourself. Cook cookies, whatever, and give that out as a Christmas gift this year. Show them that you're not going to go out there and pay for everything. Hey, Baltor, speak up. You can't shut me off. It's my channel. What? You're sad about this? What, you one of these instigators? What? You come on there and shut my microphone off. I see how you are, Baltar. You're from England. You agree with all this? You agree with all this government control over your life, over your system, over everything, even though you work for them? You are truly been taken over if you're muting me for what I'm saying. You are truly taken over. You're one of them now. Are they paying you? I hope they're paying you good. I hope they're paying you at least $30,000 a month or something. I mean, if they're paying you less than $1,000 a month, I would say screw you. Go fuck yourself. Okay, if you want to play that game, see what happens. I get these people on here, which I was real friendly with before talking with, and now look what they are. They're sold out. They've been sold out. Apparently, he's been sold out. He wouldn't have come on here and muted me unless he was sold out, because I'm speaking the truth. The truth is the truth. And I guess he either can't handle the truth. You can't handle the truth. Or he's sold out. One or the other. Or he just doesn't like what he's hearing. Well, that's an alternative too. He doesn't like what he's hearing. It's against his thinking of what's going on in the universe. And, well, he came on, shut me off, went away. I have no idea why he did that. He had no explanation, didn't come on, say nothing. I mean, I was friendly with him. I'm still friendly with him. I'm just wondering why he did such a thing. We've had good conversations before, but now suddenly it's like, oh wow, I have no idea. Are you working for the Mossad in Israel? Did Israeli get a hold of you? Did the ISIS Mossad get a hold of you? Did the Islamic Mossad get a hold of you? Did Mossad? Christmas is an evil word now. You know that there's a story out there. I'll mention that. There was a school. It was down in Georgia that they were going to have a Christmas thing, and they had Christmas on the calendar, and the Muslims said, "Oh no, Christmas, evil war," and they took it off the calendar. Well, it doesn't mean anything. The Muslims are allowed to say whatever they want. You don't have to do anything that someone else says if it's not in the law, and that's not in the law to take Christmas off the calendar for December. They can go have their little, whatever they do is Muslims, and we can have wherever we want to as Christmas. We can have a big fat Santa and running around, the imaginary Santa, and running around and do whatever we want. There's no reason why this is happening. Why is there such an anti-religious fruitation amongst our groups? The winter is cold. The winter is darkness. We have to have something, even if it's imaginary, to bring our spirits up. For when spring does come again, we're happy again. Okay? Even though I don't believe in the imaginary playmate in the sky, I really never have. I realize he's within and he comes without. That's the difference. I just don't understand. There's something wrong. There's something wrong here. There's something wrong here, and it's just wrong. I mean, you can believe whatever you want outside, but just remember God's within. You can play these games outside. It's a playground. That's what he created, was a playground. God created a playground. He's not in the playground. He's within, experiencing the playground for you. That's simple. I don't understand how people never understand that. It's simple philosophy of being a Gnostic. I totally understand it. He's not out there. There's no God out there. There's no playmate in the sky. Come on, imaginary playmate in the sky. Give me a break. He's not out there. He's not sitting in a crown and glory and everything in a throne outside. He's inside because you picture it from within and project it without. It's so simple. The philosophies of this stuff is so simple. I spent 40 years studying this, studying the occult and everything, and I've come to the conclusion that God is not out there. He's not outside the dark matter of your skull. Your brain's in a dark place. The only reason it sees anything is because the eyes, the ears, and touching and whatever else. And it experiences his creation outside. Therefore, God is actually inside, experiencing with you the outside. He just gave you a conscience. He gave you a will. He gave you all this stuff that you could be out there with to play in his playground. It's that simple. It's not complicated. Don't make it more complicated. Don't say, well, God's out there in this part of the galaxy and this part of the universe. And he's out there and he's looking down on us or anything. No, he's actually inside looking out and seeing what you're seeing, and it's really attached together, and you're just a spark of a brain cell of his. Think of it that way if you want to. And let's simplify this. Let's don't complicate Christmas. Jesus basically said this. He talked about the third eye. He talked about everything in the New Testament. In the New Testament, he actually spoke about the third eye. He talked about, the single eye. And then in the New Testament, he spoke about all this stuff, all this the stuff that comes from the Middle East and not beyond. Actually, it came from the East. It came from India and other places. Because when Jesus was 12 years old, he disappeared. And no one knows any history of him until he was about 30 years old. And he came back to the Middle East and he started teaching these philosophies and stuff because he went over there and learned it. He learned Buddhism and the rest of it. He learned all that stuff and came back with his own interpretation of it. And you are now, learning this stuff, but out seeing exactly what he was saying. All the disciples did was listen to him talk about Buddhist philosophy and Hindu philosophy and maybe even the Orient philosophy beyond India. And he came back and started teaching it. That was it. That was basically it. And he was teaching that he was a Buddha himself. He was reached that enlightenment within himself and became enlightened as the Son of God. We're all sons of God. If you don't know that, you haven't been reading the scriptures right. Oh, I'm really amazed. I'm really amazed about everything. It just blows my mind away. I'm like, am I the only one that knows this? Am I really the only one that knows all this and understand it? Sometimes it makes me think I'm a reincarnation of a reincarnation of a carnation of Christ. Not him personally, but of the whole spiritual nature of all this. That we're all a reincarnation of Christ. Pick up the cross and carry after me. It's not hard to understand.
3 rounds, AT delay in effect, 3 guns. Bravo, 2 rounds, 2 guns, smoke on the deck. SEAD, CAS TOT-62. Target number, Hotel, November 5209, request splash out. Shot over, splash out. Record his target, end of mission. Target suppressed out. Rhinos are coming in, hill. Switch to backup frequency and try again. Warhorse has you loud and clear. Go ahead, over. Warhorse, copy.
You're so fun. You're fun. You're a fun person. Yeah. Yeah. You are so fun. You are such a fun person. Why are you playing this game? There is no game. It's reality. And you're playing games out in the playground. And that's what you just did. You just played the game in the playground. Oh well. Just playing a game. Everyone plays a game. We should all play a game. I guess that's why I need to. I just played another game. I'm inviting more. I'm going to invite more people until everybody is here. And then we'll play games. And let's play games. It's a playground. It's called life. And we're in it. And it's the playground. God's observing it and is amused. He's like the father figure, if you want to call him now, or the mother figure sitting back watching her kids play in the playground. And that's what we're doing. It's the playground. It must be good to play in the playground. I tried to stay outside the edge and watch the others play. Being an old soul, that's what I do. An old soul. It's been around for thousands of years, seen all this stuff over and over again. Playing the plane, playing the game. You know, when you leave here, you just go to other world, right? Just other world. You just go to other world. It may be a parallel world of this, and it's maybe better. It could be worse, but it's the other world. This seems to be the worst world that I've experienced. It started out good, and it started changing. It's like the worlds are coming together, like in Thor. It's a coming together of worlds, and this is what's happening. It's called the end times, I guess. That's what the end times are, when all the worlds merge together. God's about ready to wake up. When he awakens, we'll all be together. All of us. That is ourselves. And that would be judgment. And we're all woken together. Judgment is actually the coming of all souls together into one. But it's maybe separate souls come together in one over incarnations. I have a belief in incarnation because of, my belief in narcissism. We are all separate souls over periods of time, but at some point the timelines start to combine together, and we're seen to be going into one of those submergence at this time. And once it happens, I mean, if you ever read the Montauk Project, they couldn't go beyond 2016. There was something wrong with 2016. They couldn't get beyond it. At a point, I mean, it was like a blank area in 2016, and then it took off afterwards. Maybe that's the convergence. Maybe she is going to bring us all together. In 2016. Remember, 2016 is 2 plus 1 plus 6. It brings us to the ninth plane. That's just before zero plane. And maybe that is what we're getting ready to fall into. I always wonder about that. I'm always wonder about that. That this is part of what was spoken in the Montauk Project that they were talking about. They did time experiments. So we're split up into different timelines, and these timelines are all going to fall in on themselves, collapse back into the one. And after they collapse, we hit zero and it starts again. We start over again. Interesting thought. I always wondered about that. Who knows? For some reason I lost my extended circles. I have no idea how I did that. Hmm. I was invited everyone. Oops. 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 I like the oops. Oops is always good. Hmm. Oops. Did I just do that? Oh, I only got about 30 minutes left here. I'm just sitting back. Okay, you can do that. Go to Google Hangouts. Still broadcasting. Got 0 views. Seem not to be able to get anyone on here. Okay. Okay, the wake. Anyways, that was my thoughts so far tonight. I don't know if I broke that off into new thoughts, but I did get something out there. And on air. I got a way of blocking that out already. That was pretty good. Just a news podcast. Nothing spectacular. Nothing that should have been done like that.
Theatre requires audience participation. Theatregoers become part of the play. We are a truly captive audience, entranced into mindlessly choosing sides at the frenzied urging of the corporate media and partisan cheerleaders firmly seated behind the microphones and television cameras of the nationally syndicated media. As the play progresses, we become part of each act, believing that we actually have a voice in this pre-scripted performance. We are bombarded with lie after lie, each worse than the previous in an attempt to convince us that we can make a difference by choosing and cheering seemingly opposing sides of the stage before us. The biggest lie of them all is that there are not two sides, but just one. It's them versus us, in a fight to the death playing out before us in this 21st century Shakespearean tragedy. It's not just death, but the premeditated murder of the middle class and anyone without a reservation at the globalists' table, and the space at that table is limited. The actors of this play are ostensibly at odds over funding the Affordable Care Act, while a peek behind the curtain tells a different story altogether. Like any play, the ending of this has already been determined. The ending, however, is not the same as written in the commemorative program you are given upon your arrival at this theatre. The house lights have been dimmed not just for the performance, but to induce us into a hypnotic trance, further enabled by the media mouthpieces of malice. As you gradually become accustomed to the theatre lighting, you'll see that it's not just a play, that you're being played. You're being manipulated into believing that the government shutdown is the actual plot of the play, while it is merely the method to continue the lie of a fictitious political paradigm. Audience members who remain seated and captivated by the stellar performances of the actors, while maintaining a mental death grip on the media cheering their side, are sadly in the majority. They're yelling at just above a throaty whisper at us, and others who see beyond and behind the curtain, telling us to sit down and shut up as we are reaching a critical moment in the performance. Meanwhile, the clock is ticking towards the October 17th deadline, when the US will officially run out of money in this scripted manufactured crisis. As the play builds up to its epilogue of evil, it serves its critical purpose of entertaining the masses and diverting our attention from the real issue, which is the killing of the US dollar. The premeditated murder of the United States petrodollar is the real act taking place behind the velvet curtain. The play merely buys the actors, the murderers of the working class, and the world as we will have once known it, time to arrange their own exodus from this Colosseum turned theatre. The actors, aided by the media of malice, continue to perform brilliantly and are effectively distracting the majority of us through the final curtain call. Then, as the actors take their bows amidst thunderous applause by the uninitiated, the majority of the audience will never see it coming. They will not see the stagehands open the cages of the lions while simultaneously closing the doors and blocking the exits. The thunderous applause at the curtain call will hide the sound of the engines on the Learjets and the rotor noise on the helicopters that will whisk the actors to safety, away from the unspeakable carnage that was planned from the beginning. By the time the screams from those who remain dutifully seated become unbearable, the globalist bankers, the money changers, the power brokers pulling the strings of the political puppets will be far from earshot. When the house lights are turned on, the remaining theatre-goers who survived will suddenly awaken to a different life. For it was never about what was seen, but always about what was hidden. It was never about the government shutdown, but the shutdown of the majority. That same majority that continues to cheer for their side, unable or unwilling to comprehend that there is only one side, their side.
There you go. That's exactly what's happening in the world today. And if you don't see what's happening in the world today, then you just didn't see it. You missed out. That is the transition. Hope you're happy. You missed out on the real economy and the real everything that's coming down the pipe. It's the end. Don't you know? Any day. The investment, what's the name of the website? Investment advisor said that in 30 days, you'll see the collapse of the dollar. It'll be bye-bye. You might as well wait until then. And you can buy it by like Southern money for a penny a piece and wallpaper your house in $100 and $1,000 bills and say, look, I have all this money on my walls. Isn't it beautiful? It's all green. Yes, this is what's coming down the pipe. And they won't let you know it. They don't want you to know it. Oh, for you to know it is to make you wise. They don't want you wise. They want you a slave. They want you to follow after whatever they come down with. I can go back up, open the media files. I got all types of stuff I can play, but I can't play it. A lot of it is, anti-play, because they'll say, oh, this is copyrighted. Well, that wasn't copyrighted. That was done by an individual that I know, and he came out with it. And I went, well, that's kind of cool. I can do iPet Goat too on Vimeo because that's an open channel. And I can do holographic universe for a movie. I can do some of these things. Come out there and play it. Why should I? I can even do this one. The Kosher Seal revealed real Jew news with, what's his name? Brother Nathan. Nathaniel, actually. Nathaniel. He won't care. They can't get me for that. They can't get me for a lot of this stuff. They can try to. And I'll sit there and go, I'll just get a hold of him and go, what? And he'll be on my side. Oh, yeah. Even Michael Hart, I could play this, but I'll probably get tagged for it. We will not go down tonight in Gaza. I could play that one. And they can't really do anything about it. It's an open source. I can do a lot of these videos. I can probably do PPK. And they can't do nothing about that because this group is Russian. And if it's Russian, oh my golly, you can exploit them as much as you want because we're an enemy with Russia now. China, anything Chinese I can probably get away with. Cancer forbidden cures. I can probably do that one. I can probably do a lot of these and get away with them. Here's one I know I can get away with.
And I went in and I did a lot of research, page of whatreallyhappened.com. I understand it's already gone viral. It's being reposted around the web. But I wanted to basically tell it to you here on the radio show. And it's a very long story. We're probably going to take the rest of the hour to do it. But it's something that you need to understand, that all of these wars and assassinations that we're told are crazed lone nut assassins or weapons of mass destruction or bringing democracy, all of them track back to the private central bankers as the initiating event. And the more you study this, the more you will realize all the wars are wars for the bankers, for the private central bankers. And I know a lot of people are going to have difficulty comprehending this, just how many of these wars we have fought as a nation were fought for no other purpose than to force private central banks onto nations that did not want them. So we're going to have a few examples so you understand why at this particular time in history the United States government is mired in so many wars against so many foreign nations. And there's plenty of precedents for this. Now, going back to the beginning, the United States fought the American Revolution primarily over King George III's Currency Act, which forced the colonists to abandon their own government-issued currencies and conduct business only using printed banknotes borrowed at interest from the Bank of England. If you go back to the writings of Ben Franklin, direct quote, the refusal of King George III to allow the colonies to operate an honest money system, which freed the ordinary man from the clutches of the money manipulators, was probably the prime cause of the revolution. That's Ben Franklin. Now, our public schools don't teach that because you're not supposed to know that the bankers were really behind the American Revolution. After the Revolution, the United States adopted a revolutionary, radically different economic system in which the government issued its own value-based currency so that private banks couldn't skim the wealth of the people through interest-bearing banking. So the American Revolution was fought primarily to free the American people from King George III's Currency Act, which ordered them to conduct all business using printed banknotes borrowed at interest from the Bank of England. So the Bank of England was just, raking in wealth from the labor of the American people in exchange for ink and paper. And that fueled the anger that led to the American Revolution. Public schools don't spend a lot of time on that, but that was really what it was all about. So the revolution was over, the United States was born, but the private bankers are nothing if not dedicated to their schemes to acquire other people's wealth, and they knew full well how easy it is to corrupt a nation's leaders. Now, just 1 year after Mayer Amschel Rothschild had uttered his infamous, "Let me issue and control the nation's money, and I care not who makes the laws," private bankers succeeded in setting up a new private central bank called the First Bank of the United States, largely through the efforts of the Rothschilds' chief supporter in the United States, Alexander Hamilton. Now, this First Bank of the United States was founded in 1791. By the end of its 20-year term, the First Bank of the United States had almost ruined the nation's economy while enriching the bank's owners. As a result, Congress refused to renew the charter and signaled their intention to go back to a state-issued value-based currency on which the people paid no interest at all to any banker. This resulted in a threat from Nathan Mayer Rothschild against the U.S. government. Quote, "Either the application for renewal of the charter is granted, or the United States will find itself involved in a most disastrous war." End quote. Congress still refused to renew the charter for the First Bank of the United States, whereupon Nathan Mayer Rothschild railed, quote, "Teach those impudent Americans a lesson. Bring them back to colonial status," end quote. Financed by the Rothschild-controlled Bank of England, Britain then launched the War of 1812 to recolonize the United States and force them back into the slavery of the Bank of England's banknotes, or to plunge the United States into so much debt they would be forced to accept a new private central bank. And the plan worked. Even though the United States won the War of 1812, Congress was forced to grant a new charter for yet another private bank, issuing the public currency as loans at interest, the Second Bank of the United States. Once again, private bankers were in control of the nation's money supply and cared not who made the laws or how many British or American soldiers had to die for. So once again, the nation was plunged into debt, unemployment, poverty by the predations of the private central bank. And in 1832, Andrew Jackson successfully campaigned for his second term as president under the slogan, "Jackson and no bank." True to his word, Jackson succeeded in blocking the renewal of the charter for the Second Bank of the United States of America. And this was where that famous quote came from Andrew Jackson. Quote, "Gentlemen, I too have been a close observer of the doings of the Bank of the United States. I have had men watching you for a long time, and I am convinced that you've used the funds of the banks to speculate in the breadstuffs of the country. When you won, you divided the profits amongst you, and when you lost, you charged it to the bank. You tell me that if I take the deposits from the bank and annul the charter, I shall ruin 10,000 families. That may be true, gentlemen, but that is your sin. Should I let you go on, you will ruin 50,000 families, and that would be my sin. You are a den of vipers and thieves. I've determined to rout you out, and by the eternal God, I will rout you out. End quote. Andrew Jackson. Shortly after the charter for the Second Bank of the United States expired, there was an assassination attempt on Andrew Jackson, and it failed when both pistols used by the assassin, Richard Lawrence, failed to fire. Later on, Lawrence explained the motive for the assassination by saying that with President Jackson dead, money would be more plenty. So it was an assassination motivated by the interests of the bankers. Now, our public school system is as subservient to the bankers' wishes to keep certain history from you, just as the corporate media is subservient to Monsanto's wishes to keep the dangers of GMOs from you, and the global warming cult's wishes to conceal from you the fact that Earth has actually been cooling for the last 16 years. So it should probably be no surprise that the financial dimension of the Civil War are not well known to the average American. It's portrayed in our history books and our popular media as an internal dispute over slavery, but in fact it was a war with global implications. When the Confederacy seceded from the United States, the bankers once again saw the opportunity for a rich harvest of debt and offered to fund Lincoln's efforts to bring the South back into the Union at 30% interest. Lincoln remarked that he would not free the black man by enslaving the white man to the bankers, and using his authority as president, issued a new government currency, the greenback. This was a direct threat to the wealth and power of the central bankers, who quickly responded. This is a quote from the London Times following Lincoln's issuance of the greenbacks. Quote, "If this mischievous financial policy, which has its origin in North America, shall become indurated down to a fixture, then that government will furnish its own money without cost. It will pay off debts and be without debt. It will have all the money necessary to carry on its commerce. It will become prosperous without precedent in the history of the world. The brains and wealth of all countries will go to North America. That country must be destroyed, or it will destroy every monarchy on the globe." So, goaded by the private bankers, much of Europe supported the Confederacy against the Union, with the expectation that victory over Lincoln would mean the end of the greenback. France and Britain seriously considered an outright invasion on the United States in support of the Confederacy, but they were held at bay by Russia. A little bit of history most Americans don't understand. Russia came to the aid of Lincoln's Union during this crisis. Now, at that time, Russia had just ended their serfdom system, and they had a state central bank similar to the system the United States had been founded on. Now, free of European intervention, the Union won the war, and Lincoln announced his intention to go on issuing the greenbacks. Following Lincoln's assassination, the greenbacks were pulled from circulation, and the American people forced to go back to an economy based on banknotes borrowed at interest from the private bankers. So finally, in 1913, the private central bankers of Europe, in particular the Rothschilds of Great Britain, the Warburgs of Germany, met with their American financial collaborators on Jekyll Island, Georgia, to form a new banking cartel with the express purpose of forming the third bank of the United States, with the aim of placing complete control of the United States money supply once again under the control of private bankers. Owing to hostility over the previous banks of the United States, the name of this third bank was changed to the Federal Reserve, in order to grant the new bank a quasi-governmental image. But in fact, it is a privately owned bank. It's no more federal than Federal Express. In fact, last year, the Federal Reserve successfully rebuffed a Freedom of Information lawsuit by Bloomberg News on the grounds that as a private banking corporation and not actually a part of the U.S. government, the Freedom of Information Act did not apply to the operators of the Federal Reserve. So 1913 proved to be a transformative year for the nation's economy. First, with Congress' passage of the 16th Income Tax Amendment and the false claim it had been ratified. Here's another direct quote. "I think if you were to go back and try and find and review the ratification for the 16th Amendment, which was the internal revenue, the income tax, I think if you went back and examined that carefully, you would find that a sufficient number of states never ratified that amendment," end quote. That's U.S. District Court Judge James C. Fox in Sullivan versus United States, 2003. Later that same year, 1913, and apparently unwilling to risk another questionable amendment, Congress passed the Federal Reserve Act over the Christmas holiday in 1913, while members of Congress opposed to the measure were at home. This was a very underhanded deal, as the Constitution explicitly vests Congress with the authority to issue the public currency, does not authorize its delegation, and thus would have required a new amendment to transfer that authority to a private bank. But pass it, Congress did, and President Woodrow Wilson signed it, as he promised the bankers he would in exchange for generous campaign contributions. Now, President Wilson later regretted that decision. You've probably heard this quote before, but you're going to get it again. Quote, "I am a most unhappy man. I have unwittingly ruined my country. A great industrial nation is now controlled by its system of credit. We are no longer a government by free opinion, no longer a government by conviction and the vote of the majority, but a government by the opinion and duress of a small group of dominant men." That was Woodrow Wilson writing in 1919. Now, 1 year after the passage of the Federal Reserve Act, World War I started. And it is important to remember that prior to the creation of the Federal Reserve, there was no such thing as a world war. Now, World War I actually started between Austria-Hungary and Serbia, but quickly shifted to focus on Germany. Why Germany? They didn't start the war. Why was Germany the villain in World War I? Well, the real reason was their industrial capacity was seen as an economic threat to Great Britain. Great Britain's pound was already in decline at the time because too much economic emphasis was on banking and finance, and not enough was on agricultural development, industrial development, and infrastructure. It's very much like the situation we have in the United States right now. All the financial operatives, they want to play the Wall Street games, and other parts of the economy are being neglected. We've lost a great deal of our manufacturing. We're not the agricultural exporter we used to be because everybody's over there at Wall Street playing in that giant open-air casino. Now, pre-war Germany did have a private central bank, but it was under strict control by the German government to keep inflation at reasonable levels and to make sure that all of the German economy was being properly funded, just like Putin did with their central bank about a month ago. Under government control by the German government, investment was guaranteed to internal economic development, and as a result, Germany had become a major manufacturing technological power. They were exporting products that Great Britain could not compete with. So in the media of the day, Germany was portrayed as the main opponent of World War I. And not just defeated, it was flattened. Now, following the Treaty of Versailles, Germany was ordered to pay the war costs of all the participating nations, even though Germany had not started that war. This amounted to 3 times the value of all of Germany itself. Germany's private central bank, to which the German government had gone deeply into debt to pay the cost of the wars, was allowed to break free of government control. That led to the massive inflation of the Weimar Republic, followed, permanently trapping the German people in endless debt. And money speculators were running rampant. And it led to these situations where you had literally a whole basket full of paper notes to get a loaf of bread. Now, when the Weimar Republic collapsed economically, it opened the door for the National Socialists to take power. Their first financial move was to issue their own state currency, which was not borrowed from private banks. It was based on a unit of value, not a unit of debt. Freed from having to pay interest on the money in circulation, Germany blossomed and quickly began to rebuild its industry. It was an amazing transformation to see. The media called it the German miracle. Time magazine lionized Hitler for the amazing improvement of life for the German people and the explosion of German industry, and they even named him Time magazine's Man of the Year in 1938. And then once again, Germany's prosperity and freedom from a private central bank loaning the public currency at interest became a threat to other nations and other powers. I have a couple of quotes here from Winston Churchill that tells you what was really going through the minds of Europe in the years leading up to World War II. Quote, "Should Germany merchandise again," which means do business, "should Germany merchandise again in the next 50 years, we have led this war, World War I, in vain." That was Winston Churchill writing in the Times in 1919. Another quote, quote, "We will force this war upon Hitler if he wants it or not," end quote. Winston Churchill in a 1936 radio broadcast. Quote, "Germany becomes too powerful. We have to crush it," end quote. Winston Churchill in November 1936, speaking to U.S. General Robert Wood. Quote, this war is an English war, and its goal is the destruction of Germany. Winston Churchill, in autumn 1939, wrote. It was all about economics and profitability. Now, Germany's state-issued value-based currency was also a direct threat to the wealth and power of the private central banks around the world. And as early as 1933, they started to organize a global boycott against Germany to strangle this upstart ruler who thought he could run his nation without a private central bank. Now, as had been the case in World War I, Great Britain and other nations threatened by Germany's economic power looked for an excuse to go to war. And as public anger in Germany grew over the boycott, Hitler foolishly gave them that excuse. Years later, in a spirit of candor, the real reasons for the war were made clear. Quote, the war wasn't only about abolishing fascism, but to conquer sales markets. We could have, if we had intended so, prevented this war from breaking out without doing one shot, but we didn't want to. End quote. Winston Churchill to Harry Truman, March 1946. One more quote here. Quote, Germany's unforgivable crime before World War II was its attempt to loosen its economy out of the world trade system and to build up an independent exchange system from which the world finance couldn't profit anymore. We butchered the wrong pig, end quote. Winston Churchill writing in his book, The Second World War. Now, a little side note, we're going to actually step back in time to the years before World War II. A little bit of history a lot of Americans are still completely unaware of. And it involves a gentleman by the name of Marine Corps Major General Smedley Butler. In 1933, Wall Street bankers and financiers had bankrolled the successful rise to power of Hitler and Mussolini. Brown Brothers Harriman in New York, and they're still there. I saw them when I was there for the 9/11 anniversary. They were financing Hitler right up to the day war was declared with Germany. And these Wall Street financiers decided that a fascist dictatorship in the United States, based on the one Mussolini had in Italy, was going to be far better for their business interests than Roosevelt's New Deal, which threatened massive wealth redistribution to recapitalize the working and middle classes of America. So the Wall Street tycoons recruited General Butler to lead the overthrow of the U.S. government and install a Secretary of General Affairs who would be answerable to Wall Street and not the people, would crush social unrest and shut down all the labor unions. General Butler pretended to go along with the scheme, but then exposed the plot to Congress. So they recruited Marine Corps Major General Smedley Butler to lead this coup d'etat because Butler was very popular with the soldiers, and his image as part of this move would help convince the military this was the right thing to do. Now, to his credit, Major General Smedley Butler, remembering his oaths to the Constitution, pretended to go along with the scheme, but then exposed the plot to the United States Congress. Congress, then as now in the pocket of Wall Street bankers, refused to act. When Roosevelt learned of the planned coup, he demanded the arrest of the plotters, but the plotters simply reminded Roosevelt that if any one of them was sent to prison, their friends on Wall Street would deliberately collapse the still fragile U.S. economy and blame Roosevelt for it. So Roosevelt was unable to do anything about this attempted coup d'etat until the start of World War II, at which time he prosecuted many of the plotters under the Trading with the Enemy Act. Now, mostly it was glossed over. It was just a rumor, unfounded, it's wacko conspiracy theory. But in 1967, the congressional minutes of Smedley Butler's revelation to Congress of the coup were finally released to the public. You ever see this movie, 7 Days in May? Kirk Douglas and Burt Lancaster, about an attempted military takeover of the United States of America. It was based loosely on this story. But of course, in the movie, the bankers being behind the Burt Lancaster character was completely removed from the script here. Now, Smedley Butler is also famous for writing a work called War is a Racket. And I would like to read you a quote from that. Quote, I spent 33 years and 4 months in active military service as a member of our country's most agile military force, the Marine Corps. I served in all commissioned ranks from second lieutenant to major general. And during that period, I spent more of my time being a high-class muscle man for big business, for Wall Street, and for the bankers. In short, I was a racketeer, a gangster for capitalism. I suspected I was just part of a racket at the time. Now I'm sure of it. Like all members of the military profession, I never had an original thought until after I left the service. My mental faculties remained in suspended animation while I obeyed the orders of the higher-ups. This is typical with everyone in the military service. Thus, I helped make Mexico and especially Tampico safe for American oil interests in 1914. I helped make Haiti and Cuba a decent place for the National City Bank boys to collect revenues in. I helped in the raping of half a dozen Central American republics for the benefit of Wall Street. The record of racketeering is long. I helped purify Nicaragua for the International Banking House of Brown Brothers in 1909 through 1912. I brought light to the Dominican Republic for American sugar interests in 1916. In China in 1927, I helped see to it that the Standard Oil went its way unmolested. During those years, I had, as the boys in the back room would say, a swell racket. I was rewarded with honors, medals, and promotion. Looking back on it, I feel I might have given Al Capone a few hints. The best he could do was operate his racket in 3 city districts. I operated on 3 continents. General Smedley Butler, former U.S. Marine Corps Commandant, and he wrote that in 1935. So, now moving forward here. As president, John Fitzgerald Kennedy understood the predatory nature of private central banking. He understood why Andrew Jackson fought so hard to end the second bank of the United States. So Kennedy wrote and signed Executive Order 11110, which ordered the U.S. Treasury to issue a new public currency called the United States note. Now, Kennedy's United States notes were not borrowed from the Federal Reserve. They were created by the U.S. government and backed by the silver stockpiles held by the U.S. government. It represented a return to the system of economics the United States had been founded on, and it was perfectly legal for Kennedy to do so under the Constitution. All told, some $4.5 billion went into the public circulation, which eroded interest payments to the Federal Reserve and loosened their control over the nation. 5 months after signing Executive Order 11110, John F. Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas, Texas, and the United States notes pulled from circulation and destroyed. Following Kennedy's assassination, John J. McCloy, president of the Chase Manhattan Bank and president of the World Bank, was named to the Warren Commission. Now, I don't care how good a banker he is, he's not qualified to be investigating a murder, which is what we were told the Warren Commission was all about, to get the truth of the assassination. But we all know that the Warren Commission was there to cover up what was going on, and obviously we can presume safely that John J. McCloy's presence on the Warren Commission was to make sure the American public never got even a hint of the financial dimensions behind the assassination. So, as we enter the 11th year of what I am certain future history will most certainly describe as World War III, we need to examine the financial dimensions behind all these wars. Why are we here? Why are our children being killed and crippled? Is this another war for the profit of the private central bankers? And the answer is yes. Now, toward the end of World War II, when it became obvious that the Allies were going to win and dictate the post-war political environment, the major world economic powers met at Bretton Woods, a luxury resort in New Hampshire, in July of 1944, and they hammered out the Bretton Woods Agreement for International Finance. The British pound lost its position as the global trade and reserve currency to the U.S. dollar. There are indications this was part of the price demanded by Roosevelt in exchange for the U.S. entry into the war. Now, absent the economic advantages of being the world's go-to currency, Britain was forced to nationalize their Bank of England in 1946. The Bretton Woods Agreement, ratified in 1945, in addition to making the dollar the global reserve and trade currency, obligated the signatory nations to tie their currencies to the dollar. The nations that ratified Bretton Woods did so on 2 conditions. The first was that the Federal Reserve would refrain from overprinting the dollar, basically as a means to loot real products and produce from other nations in exchange for ink and paper. It basically was an imperial tax imposed by the U.S. economic system on the rest of the world. That assurance of no overprinting was supposedly backed up by the second requirement, which was that the U.S. dollar would always be convertible back to gold by the U.S. government at $35 an ounce. Now, of course, the Federal Reserve, being a private bank and not answerable to the U.S. government, did in fact start overprinting paper dollars, which were sent to other nations around the world, and under Bretton Woods, they had to send back products and produce and raw materials at full value. And much of the perceived American prosperity of the 1950s and 60s was the result of these foreign nations having to send real raw materials, goods, produce, back to the United States in exchange for these little pieces of paper with ink all over them, because they were forced to accept these paper notes as being worth $35 per ounce of gold. Then in 1970, France started looking at this huge pile of printed paper notes sitting in their bank vaults, for which real French product like wine and cheese had been traded, and it notified the United States government that they would exercise their option under Bretton Woods to return all those paper notes for gold at the agreed upon $35 per ounce exchange rate. The problem was the United States had nowhere near the gold to redeem all those paper notes. So on August 15th, 1971, Richard Nixon temporarily, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, say no more, suspended gold convertibility of the U.S. Federal Reserve notes. This Nixon shock, as it was termed at the time, effectively ended Bretton Woods, and many global currencies started to delink from the U.S. dollar. And it created another problem because the United States had been collateralizing their loans, money borrowed from other governments and foreign investors, with the American nation's gold reserves. And with the awareness that there wasn't enough gold to redeem all the Federal Reserve notes, lenders to the U.S. were starting to wonder, did the U.S. government have enough gold to collateralize their outstanding debts? Foreign nations began to get very nervous about the loans to the United States, and they were understandably reluctant to loan any additional money without some form of collateral. So what Richard Nixon did is he founded the environmental movement with the EPA and its various programs like wilderness zones and roadless areas and heritage rivers, wetlands, and all these other little different programs, which all took vast areas of public lands and made them off limits to the American people, who are technically the owner of all those lands. But Nixon had no concern for the environment, and the real purpose of this land grab, under the guise of the environment, was to pledge those pristine lands and their vast mineral resources as collateral on the outstanding national debt. The multitude of all these different programs was simply to conceal the scale of the land grab and collateralization of the American people's heritage. And it actually today covers almost 25% of the entire nation, is now locked up by these EPA programs and pledged as collateral on government borrowing. Now, with open lands, available lands for collateralization already in short supply, the U.S. government embarked on a new program to shore up sagging international demand for the dollar. The United States approached the world's oil-producing nations, mostly in the Middle East, and offered them a deal. In exchange for only selling their oil for dollars, the United States would guarantee the military safety of those oil-rich nations. The oil-rich nations would agree to spend and invest their U.S. paper dollars inside the United States, particularly in U.S. Treasury bonds, which would be redeemable through future generations of U.S. taxpayers. The concept was labeled the petrodollar. In effect, the United States, no longer able to back the dollar with gold, was now backing it with oil, other people's oil. And that necessity to keep control over those oil nations to prop up the dollar has dominated America's foreign policy in the region ever since. But as America's manufacturing and agriculture has declined, the oil-producing nations faced a dilemma. Like France, they've got piles and piles of these paper notes and treasury bonds piling up in their vaults, and there really wasn't all that much except real estate they wanted to buy from the United States of America. Europe's cars and aircraft were superior and less costly. In more recent times, America's experiment with GMO food crops has led a lot of nations to simply avoid buying U.S. agricultural exports. Israel's constant belligerence against its neighbors has caused the oil-producing nations to wonder if the U.S. could actually keep their end of the petrodollar arrangement. So oil-producing nations started to talk of selling their oil for whatever currency the purchasers wanted to pay. Iraq, already somewhat hostile to the United States following Desert Storm, demanded the right to sell their oil for euros in 2000. In 2002, the United Nations agreed that Iraq had a right to sell their oil for euros under the Oil for Food program. 1 year later, 2003, the United States reinvaded Iraq, lynched Saddam Hussein, and placed Iraq's oil back on the world market, only available for U.S. dollars. Now, the clear U.S. policy shift following 9/11, away from at least attempting to appear to be an impartial broker of peace in the Mideast to one of unquestioned support for Israel's aggressions, only further eroded confidence in the petrodollar deal. And even more oil-producing nations started openly talking of trading their oil for other global currencies. So over in Libya, Muammar Gaddafi had instituted a state central bank and a value-based trade currency, the gold dinar. Gaddafi then announced that Libya's oil was for sale, but only for the gold dinar. Other African nations, seeing the rise of the gold dinar and the euro, even as the U.S. dollar continued its inflation-driven decline, flocked to the new Libyan currency for trade. This move had the potential to seriously undermine the global hegemony of the dollar. French President Nicolas Sarkozy reportedly went so far as to call Libya a threat to the financial security of the world. So the United States invaded Libya under the the guise of supporting a popular rebellion. They brutally murdered Gaddafi, apparently because the object lesson of Saddam's lynching had not been enough of a message, imposed a private central bank, and returned Libya's oil output to dollars only. The gold that was supposed to be made into gold dinars, as of the last report I could find, unaccounted for. Now, according to General Wesley Clark, the master plan for the dollarification of the world's oil nations included 7 targets: Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and Iran. Venezuela, which has started selling their oil to China for the yuan, seems to be a late addition. What is notable about those original 7 nations targeted by the U.S. is that none of them are members of the Bank of International Settlements. This is the private central banker's private central bank located in Switzerland. That meant that those 7 targeted nations were deciding for themselves how to run their nation's economies rather than submitting to the international private central bankers. Now, of course, the bankers' gun sights are on Iran, which dares to have a government central bank and sell their oil for whatever currency they choose. The war agenda for Iran is, as always, to force Iran's oil to be sold only for dollars and to force them to accept a privately owned central bank. Now, you have been raised by a public school system and a media that constantly assures you that the reasons for all these wars and assassinations are many and varied. We're bringing democracy to the conquered lands. We hear that a lot more. Actually, the U.S. has it. The usual result of the U.S. overthrow is the imposition of a pro-business, pro-Wall Street, pro-U.S. dictatorship. Good example, the 1953 CIA overthrow of Iran's democratically elected government of Mohammad Mossadegh and the imposition of the Shah. Or the 1973 CIA overthrow of Chile's elected government of President Salvador Allende and the imposition of the dictator Augusto Pinochet. Another one of the excuses we'll get is we have to save the people from a cruel oppressor. That's the one they're using in Syria right now. Revenge for 9/11. That was a big one going into Iraq. And then later on, President Bush was caught on video saying, no, Iraq had nothing to do with 9/11. And behind all of them, that tired, worn-out, catch-all excuse for invasion, weapons of mass destruction. Assassinations are always passed off as crazed lone nuts to obscure the real agenda. And the real agenda of the bankers is very simple. It is enslavement of the people by creation of a false sense of obligation. Now, that obligation is false because the private central banking system by design creates more debt than money with which to pay the debt. There is no way out the way it's set up. It's impossible to escape as long as you're by their rules. And you need to understand, private central banking is not science. It is a religion. It's a set of arbitrary rules created to benefit the priesthood, meaning the bankers, and it is supported only because people believe this is the way it's supposed to be. It is a religion. It's a set of arbitrary rules created to benefit the priesthood, meaning the owners of the private central banks. The fraud persists with often lethal results only because the people are brainwashed into believing that this is the way life is supposed to be and no alternative exists or should even be dreamt of. Now, this same approach, same brainwashing, was true of 2 earlier systems of enslavement, rule by divine right and slavery, both systems built to trick people into obedience, and both now recognized by modern civilization as illegitimate. So now we are on the verge of a new era in history where we will recognize that rule by debt, rule by private central bankers issuing the public currency as a loan at interest is equally illegitimate. It only works as long as people allow themselves to believe that this is the way life is supposed to be. But you need to understand something that's the core of the issue. Private central banks do not exist to serve the people, the community, or the nation. Private central banks exist to serve their owners, to make them rich beyond the dreams of Midas, and all for the cost of ink, paper, and the right bribe to the right official, and the occasional assassination. But behind all these wars and all these assassinations, the 100 million plus horrible deaths from all of these wars, lies a single policy of financial dictatorship. The private central bankers only allow rulers to rule, only on the promise that the people of a nation be enslaved to the private central banks. Rulers who do not go along with that will be killed, their nation invaded by those other nations still enslaved to the private central banks. The bankers themselves don't fight these wars. Their children are not in these wars. A nation tries to break free of the private central bankers like Libya. All the other nations under the bankers' control pile on and destroy them. This so-called clash of civilizations you are being told about by the corporate media, it's really a war between banking systems, with the private central bankers forcing themselves onto the rest of the world, no matter how many millions must die for it. The constant hate-mongering against Muslims you see in the corporate media lies in a simple fact. Like the ancient Christians, prior to the Knights Templars, Muslims forbid usury or the lending of money at interest because they saw in ancient times, like Rome, how these banking practices could destroy an entire society. And that is the reason our government and media insist that Muslims have to be hated and killed and converted. They refuse to submit to currencies loaned at interest. They refuse to be debt slaves. That makes them a threat to the natural order of the world, the new world order of global fascist dictatorship. So, off to war your children must go to spill their blood for the money junkies' gold. We barely survived the last 2 world wars. Now we're going into the 3rd one in the nuclear bioweapon age. That is very dangerous. We have to ask ourselves, are the private central bankers willing to risk incinerating the whole planet to feed their greed? Apparently so. You as parents, as siblings, as spouses, need to ask yourself, do you really want to see your loved ones in uniform, killed and crippled, all for a bank balance sheet? But the whole point of this article, the whole point of what I'm sharing with you today, this is all history. You can go out and hunt it down for yourself. Behind all the flag waving, behind all the propaganda, behind the crazed lone nut assassins, weapons of mass destruction, all of the modern wars this nation have fought are wars by and for the private bankers, fought and bled for by third parties unaware of the true reason they're expected to gracefully accept being killed and crippled for. And the process is quite simple. We've explained it before on this show. As soon as the private central bank issues its currency as a loan at interest, the public is forced deeper and deeper into debt. When the people are reluctant to borrow anymore, that's when the Keynesian economists demand the government borrow more to keep the pyramid scheme working. When both the people and the government refuse to borrow anymore, that is when the large wars get started, to plunge everyone even deeper to debt to pay for the war, and then after the war to borrow even more to rebuild. And when these horrible wars are over, the ordinary people have basically what they had before the war, except their graveyards are a lot larger, and everyone is in debt to the private bankers for the next century. That is why Brown Brothers Harriman in New York was funding the rise of Adolf Hitler, because war is the bankers' richest harvest. We all need to recognize this is what all these wars have been about. Private central banking, enlarging their domain, imposing their will on nations that do not want it, imposing their system on the rulers of nations who do not want it. Bribery, blackmail, assassination, they will do anything to maintain their stranglehold on the productivity of the world's people. And as long as private central banks are allowed to exist, inevitably, as the night follows the day, there will be poverty, hopelessness, millions of deaths in endless world wars until the earth itself is sacrificed in flames to Mammon. The path to true world peace lies in the abolishment of all private central banking everywhere and a return to the state-issued, value-based currencies that allow nations and people to become prosperous through their own labor and development and efforts. Now, I mentioned the Knights Templars. Prior to the Knights Templars, Christianity, like Islam, forbade usury because Christianity, much of Orthodox Christianity, came out of Rome, and they had seen firsthand what debt-based economies do, even to the Roman Empire. They'd seen it firsthand, so they had a ban on usury. And the Knights Templars were able to basically either bribe or blackmail the Pope to get a special dispensation that allowed them to rent money, is what they called it. They didn't call it usury, they called it renting money. A lot of modern predatory banking practices were pioneered by the Knights Templars, and they plunged Europe into hopelessly unpayable debt until finally French King Philip IV, otherwise known as Philip the Fair, did the only solution he could do, because he understood as long as you believed in the rules of the bankers, as long as you played by the rules they created to serve themselves, you are hopelessly trapped. And so Philip thought outside the box, and I know he's demonized for it, but in looking at the history of the Templars, it was his last resort. He sent messages to all of the regions in France, secret orders on the same time, in the same moment, on the same day. All of the Templars were arrested, and their commanderies, which is what they called their banks, were broken into, looking for looted wealth. They didn't find a lot of it. It was a paper empire, just like the Federal Reserve is. It's all based on paper. Nothing of any real value there. It's all paper notes. And he sent the Templars to prison and execution, except for Scotland and Portugal, where the Pope and King Philip IV really didn't have a lot of control. I think that the governments of the world, looking at the situation, looking how close we are to seeing this current world conflict emerge into a full-blown global thermonuclear war, that maybe they need to start thinking about the wisdom of King Philip the Fair and say it's time to simply grab all these private central bankers all at the same time so they can't simply skedaddle from one nation to another and come back and try the same thing again, as they will inevitably do, because these people are addicts. They're hopelessly addicted to other people's money. That's why we call them money junkies. When we see somebody who's addicted to cocaine or methamphetamine or heroin, and we can easily see how they're destroying their home and community around them. Now we need to look at these money addicts and look at how they're destroying the entire world around them. And it's time for an intervention. It's time for us to become private central banking heretics, to stop believing that this is the way life is supposed to be, because it isn't. It isn't even the way the United States was actually started. And they're trying as hard. Look at the destruction of our nation. We used to be the world's greatest nation. Now the most generous estimate is we're down to number 16 and still falling. And yet, despite the destruction to our nation, its infrastructure, its children, its quality of medical care, the quality of its manufacturing output, we still are compelled somehow to go out and force this same banking system onto the rest of the world at the point of a bayonet. Does that make any sense at all? Not to a rational human being. To a money junkie, yeah, it's perfect. But we're really at a crisis point in history. And the first step to resolving that crisis, to not let it go any further into a potential nuclear war, is to recognize that private central banking, ruled by manufactured illusion of debt, is no more legitimate a system of governance than rule by divine right or rule by slavery. We all need to recognize the true cause of all the pain and suffering in wars. It's not the terrorists, it's not Al-Qaeda. These are just distractions and set pieces put in front of your eyes so you can't see the very clear pattern behind much of modern human history. It's a war of banking systems, with the predatory private central banks seeking to eradicate any nation and any ruler that would dare try and operate their economy outside the control of the private central bankers. That's the real cause for the war. Is it something you're willing to fight and die for, to support these private central bankers? Is it something you're willing to let your sons and daughters and brothers and sisters be blown to bloody bits for, so the money junkies can have their latest fix, just a little tiny bit more gold or a little larger number on the bottom of that brokerage statement, so they can have today's thrill, their fix of money that is bought with the blood of your children? I don't think so. But the time has come to point out what really is the cause of all causes behind all the wars and suffering that our planet is having to endure and our people are having to endure. The common enemy of all humankind are private central banks issuing the public currency as a loan at interest. And as history will show, they will do anything, up to and including global wars, to keep their lock on yours and your children's future economic well-being and productivity. We're not a free society. Media will tell us that we're free, but we're not free. We are slaves. Our slave chains are made of paper, and that paper is the Federal Reserve note. Too few of our leaders have tried to stand up to this system of enslavement, usually with lethal results. But if all the people of the world at the same time stand up and say no more private central banks, it will come crashing down, just as slavery did, just as rule by divine right did, and then we'll be embarking on a new era in human history, where the emphasis on social development is on the people and not on the money junkie.